Okay, this video is to help you understand the subjunctive, what it is, and when to use it. Some of you, this may just be a review. Some of you may be hearing this information for the first time. Either way, it's fine. Just watch the video and follow along with the packet that you received in class. Okay, first, what does it look like? How is it formed? The first several pages of the packet have to do with how it's formed. What does it look like? How do you recognize it? The way to form the subjunctive is really 3 easy steps. You start with the yo form, you take off the o, and then you add the opposite ending. So what that means is if it's an AR verb like hablar, you would put the ER or IR endings on it. And if it's an ER verb like beber or vivir, you would put the AR endings on it. Okay? So let's look at an example. So for example, hablar. Start with the yo form, hablo, take off the o, and then add the opposite ending. We're going to add an E to that one. Here's an ER verb, beber. Start with the yo form, bebo, bebo. Take off the O and add the opposite ending, beba. It gets the AR ending because it's an ER verb. It gets the opposite ending. Here's an IR verb, vivo, vivir, right? Start with vivo, the yo form, take off the O, and add the opposite ending, the AR ending, because it's an IR verb, viva. If you look in your book on page, the very first page of the packet, the very front page, you can see all the different forms. They use an AR verb, ER verb, and an IR verb, and you can see what the form looks like. So you can see that like the yo form and the he, she form are the same. You'll just know from context if it's different or not, but it follows that same basic pattern. You would add an S for the to form, a mos for the nosotros form, and en for the ellos or ustedes form. So you can see that pattern right there in your packet. So what about stem changing verbs? Same thing. Start with the yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending. So like duermo, dormir, you're going to say duermo, drop the o, add the opposite ending, duerma, because it's an IR verb. So there's some more information about stem changing verbs in your book on page 164, in your packet on page 164, so you can see what those look like. Notice that it still follows that boot pattern for stem changing verbs. It still follows that boot pattern, more or less. It's just that outside of the boot, for example, it does a single letter stem change. So instead of dormamos, it's durmamos with a U. Or instead of sentimos, like it is in present tense, for sentir, it's with an I, just sintamos. Seguir is just an E to I stem changer anyway, so it's just does its normal pattern, and it doesn't follow the boot for this one. Okay, so now we're to exercise A. Basically, what you're supposed to do here is you have a list of items that say what people are not doing, and you're going to say, but I want them to do that thing. I want them to is a phrase that requires a subjunctive. So you can see this example that's here. It says, Alicia no estudia química. Alicia is not studying chemistry. And you're going to say, but I want her to study chemistry. Pero yo quiero que estudie química. Notice it's that verb after the que that gets the subjunctive ending. It's estudiar, right? So we started with estudio, take off the O, add the opposite ending, the ER endings for those AR verbs. Estudie química. So for example, number 1. So another example, it says number 1 says Marcos no trabaja. Marcos doesn't work. But you're going to say, but I want Marcos to work. I want him to work. So you would say this. Pero yo quiero que trabaje. Right? But I want him to work. In Spanish, we say, I want that he works. Okay? This is a really good one to practice. So you can see the first 6 are on this page. There's some more at the top of the next page of the packet. You can pause and work through those now, or you can save them for later. Okay, so what if the yo form is weird? Same thing, follow the same pattern. Start with the yo, drop the o, add the opposite ending. So for example, a verb like hacer, the yo form is hago, right? Same thing. Start with the yo, hago, drop the o, add the opposite ending. It becomes haga, hagas, haga. Hagamos, hagáis, hagan, right? A verb like conocer that becomes conozco, It's weird in the yo form. Same thing. Start with the yo, conozco, drop the o, add the opposite ending, conozca. That's why we say start with the yo form, because if it's irregular, the yo form, it's irregular in all the subjunctive. So it doesn't make as much of a difference with verbs like hablar, that's normal. You could just say, just add the opposite ending. But for the reason we say start with the yo form is for verbs like this, because if it's irregular in the yo form, it's irregular in all the other forms. So if you look in your book on in your packet on page 165 and 166, you'll see a bunch of those verbs that are irregular in the yo form. So you see what they look like in the subjunctive. So on this first column here, you have all those ones that we call them go verbs, like hacer, right? You have poner, salir, all those keep that G ending and then add the A to it. Then you see some other ones over here in this other table that also have irregular yo forms and what they look like in all the different forms. So you have those to use as a reference. Okay, are there any other irregulars? You may have been thinking at this point, well, not all yo forms end with an O. What the yo form doesn't end with an O, it's probably like irregular. It's on this list, right? So the acronym that we have for the irregulars is called DISHES. DISHES, right? And then each one stands for a different verb. Here they are: dar, ir, ser, haber, estar, saber. So you'll notice none of these end with O, right? Dar is doy, ir is boy, ser is soy. Haber, don't worry about the yo form of haber right now. It's a, but we usually think of it as I, right? That it doesn't really have a yo form. Estar, the yo form is estoy, y saber is sé, right? Like yo sé. So these are the irregular forms of those. These are what they look like. De, with an accent mark. Vaya, sea, haya, esté, and sepa. And in this little table in your packet on page 166, you can see all the forms of those verbs. So you'll notice with de that there's an accent mark on the first person and the third person since they're the same to distinguish that word from de that means of or from. The only thing that's irregular about estar is that they treat it just like if it just had an O, like if it was estoy, right? So it's pretty regular that way. It just has accent marks on all those E's. And then the other ones get these weird stems, right? And then you add, they're all ER, IR verbs, so they all get the AR endings, right? So haya, vaya, sepa, sea for those. Okay, so those are your regulars. All right, now it's time for some more practice. Exercise B. So what you're doing with this one is every question is a question about something about Maria. Does Maria know this thing? And what you're going to say is she doesn't just know, she's happy about it. She's happy that something is happening is another phrase that requires the subjunctive in that verb after the que. So let's look at this example. The model says, ¿Sabe María que viene Juan Carlos? Does Maria know that Juan Carlos is coming? And the answer says, sí, se alegra de que venga. Yes, she's happy that he's coming. Okay? So that's the pattern you're going to follow with the rest of these. You're going to say, yes, she's happy that this thing is happening. So the first one is, ¿Sabe María que conoces a Pedro? Does Maria know that you know Pedro? And you're going to say, yes, she's happy that I know him. Here's what it looks like. Oops. Sí, se alegra de que conozca a Pedro. Yes, she's happy that I know Pedro. Okay? The next one says, ¿Sabe María que tenemos un día libre? Does Maria know that we have a day off? You're going to say, yes, she's happy that we have a day off. And number 3 says, does Maria know that Alfredo brings her flowers or is bringing her flowers? And you're going to say, yes, she's happy that Alfredo is bringing her flowers. So you're going to change those verb forms that you see to the subjunctive form. We just have to pay attention. So like on that first one, I couldn't just change it to conozcas because I had to think about the context. If I said, does Maria know that you know Pedro? I wouldn't answer with, yeah, Maria's happy that you know Pedro. I would answer with, Maria's happy that I know Pedro. So sometimes you'll just be changing the form of the subjunctive. Sometimes you have to pay attention to the meaning of the sentence to make sure you get the right verb form in there. Okay. There's some more of those. Practice, do all of exercise B. You can pause now and do it, or you can do it on your own later. All right, is there anything else weird? Yes, there's some spelling changes. So verbs that end with car, gar, and zar get a weird spelling change. So If this, in the verbs that end with car, the C goes to QU, with G it goes to GU, and with, for gar verbs and verbs that end with sar, the Z goes to a C. So let's look at an example. Oh, let's talk about why, first of all. The reason that happens is because if those are all AR verbs, so we're going to put on all the ER endings, right? We're going to add an E after that consonant. We want to keep the same sound of the letter. And so if you look at a C, C can make two sounds in Spanish. It can make this like gracias or like celos. It can also make the k sound like carro or copa or cupido, right? So when you put an E after a C, it makes that S sound. And we want it to keep that K sound. So that's why we change it from C to QU. Same thing with G. Oops. So, for example, if a G comes before an I or an E, it's the H sound, like H in English, right? So you have words like gigante or gente. G can also make the G sound, like the second syllable in gigante, or gol, or orgullo. So if it's followed by A, O, or U, it makes the G sound. So if we're adding an A after that, if we're adding an E after that, it would make those all make that soft G sound that sounds like H, right? So we want to add that extra U that'll end up being silent, but to keep that hard G sound. Now with Z to C, it doesn't really make a change in the way that it's pronounced. It's just that you don't see that ZE combination in Spanish. Okay, so let's look at some examples. You can see this is the page on the packet from on page 167, where you see the C to QU, G to GU, Z to C. And we also have a similar change with some ER and IR verbs that end with G or GU or C at the end, and those change to these. So like G will go to the J sound to keep that soft G sound. It's like we want to keep, like a verb like escoger in this first example, right? Escoger. If we just left it a G, it would be escogas, and we want to keep that escoger, that G sound that's soft. So we have to change it to a J, escojas. Same thing with siguen, right? We want this seguir, it has this GU in it. It has that GU in it, and we want to keep that hard G sound. So we're going to keep, we don't need the U anymore. We can just say sigan, right? And then convencer with CER, it becomes convenza when you put the A. Okay? All right. So now you kind of know how it's formed. You've got some practice. Got some practice exercises in your packet. You're responsible for all the exercises that are in the packet. So make sure you're working on all of those. Now let's talk about when do you use it. We're going to pause this video right now because it's going to run out of time. So we're going to pause here and we're going to make another video that tells you about when to use it.